Israelis continue to pound Gaza as the death toll climbs to 88, while the Israeli premier rules out the possibility of a ceasefire. Palestinian resistance groups retaliate to Israeli aggression, launching rockets against major Israeli cities. And Erbil taunts Nouri al-Maliki after the Iraqi premier accused the Kurdish authorities of harboring extremist militants. Good evening, you're watching Al-Attijah World News with me, Maryam Khaddar. Israeli aggression against the Gaza Strip has entered its third day and intensified as Israeli warplanes pounded the enclave with more than 60 air raids, raising the death toll to at least 89, including 24 children and 15 women. Israeli occupation forces continued to launch airstrikes against Gaza, targeting densely populated areas. The deadliest Zionist attack claimed the lives of 8 Palestinians from the same family, including 5 children, and injured 16 others in the southern city of Khan Yunis. Other air raids targeted civilians, killing another 12 people. Elsewhere, an Israeli missile hit a car, killing 3 civilians in the town of Jabalia in the northern part of the Strip. Zionist forces also destroyed the Palestinian side of the Erez border crossing after bombarding it while Israeli warships hit Gaza's port. The Palestinian Health Ministry has announced that at least 630 people were injured since the beginning of the Israeli operation against Gaza in more than 800 attacks carried out by Israeli occupation forces. In retaliation to those deadly Israeli attacks, Palestinian resistance factions have fired a barrage of rockets and mortar rounds into Israeli settlements. Reports confirmed that 5 rockets hit the occupied city of Al-Quds, 2 of which landed near the Israeli Knesset. At least 7 other rockets were fired at Tel Aviv and Gush Dan. Israeli media reported that 1 person was critically wounded after a rocket struck a car in Ashdod, south of Tel Aviv. Earlier, the Mujahideen brigades managed to down an Israeli reconnaissance drone using a SAM-7 rocket. Dozens of other rockets landed on territories occupied by the Israelis, including settlements such as Sedrot and Ashkelon. Al-Qassam brigades, Hamas's military wing, shelled the occupied city of Haifa with an R-160 missile, in a sign of the growing military capabilities of the resistance. The Israeli Ramon military airport, which is located 70 kilometers away from Gaza, was also targeted for the first time. The sirens of alarm have triggered a state of panic among Israeli settlers that are in hiding in underground shelters. Let's get Balsam Al-Atrash, our Gaza correspondent, on the line for more of the latest. Balsam, just update us on the current situation in the Gaza Strip.
The latest in the situation on the Gaza Strip is an Israeli occupation airstrikes targeting the area I am currently in at this moment. Huge explosive sounds and bombing is heard. Ambulances and medical teams are rushing to the location that was hit by the Israeli warplanes in Deir al-Balah, the central area of Gaza Strip. Also, the latest Palestinian to die was Abdullah Abu Mahrouk from Al-Qassam Brigade. He was killed on an airstrike on his motorbike in Deir al-Balah 5 minutes after iftar. Also, an 8-year-old boy was killed in an airstrike in Al-Hikr area in Deir al-Balah. The boy, Abdurrahman Khattab, was killed after an Israeli airstrike hit their home. Israeli warplanes fired a missile at a car in the northern Gaza Strip and killed 3 Palestinians. 90% of the targets by the Israeli warplanes are civilian targets and populated areas. The latest statistics on the strikes are 842 strikes since the beginning of the offensive on Gaza. The resistance has fired back around 753 rockets, and around 133 houses have been partly or fully damaged so far.
All right, we will leave it there. Balsam Al-Atrash, our Gaza correspondent, we appreciate those updates. Well, amid the escalating violence, thousands of Palestinians took part in funeral processions for people who were killed in those ongoing Israeli air raids.
This is Operation Protective Edge, the latest line of Israeli aggression against the people of Gaza. Despite Israeli barrage of missiles unleashed against the coastal strip, thousands of Gazans went out to mourn the deaths of their fellow Palestinians. At least 31 people were killed on the third day of the massive air campaign, bringing the total death toll to 89 people. During the funeral procession, mourners could be heard shouting, "Revenge on the Zionists," a sign that many Gazans will continue fighting. Most of the bloodshed is taking place in the southern city of Khan Yunis, a densely populated refugee camp with very poor infrastructure. This man had to pull out both his wife and daughter from the rubble after an Israeli rocket hit his home.
I pulled my wife out of the rubble 20 minutes after the airstrikes hit my home. She's now in critical condition, but fortunately my daughter is still alive and is in good health.
But it may be too soon to start cleaning up the blood and debris from Gaza's streets, as Tel Aviv has prepared a possible ground operation to finish off the Palestinian resistance in the world's biggest open-air prison.
Meanwhile, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has ruled out any potential ceasefire agreement with Palestinian resistance groups. Netanyahu rejected the possibility of a truce to end the attacks on Gaza, saying that such a step was not on the agenda during the meeting with an Israeli Knesset committee. This as the Israeli cabinet decided to continue the war on Gaza following an intensive meeting in Tel Aviv. This as Hamas condemned that offensive against Gaza as a war crime and accused the world of sitting idly by as the regime in Tel Aviv commits atrocities against the Palestinians. The Palestinian resistance group reiterated its commitment to fight back against Israeli aggression using all means available.
We confirm that what is happening in Gaza are real war crimes that take place while the world is standing in silence and the Arab world is weak. We ask the international community to carry out its responsibilities against the war crimes committed by the occupation. We as Palestinians confirm that we will use every means to protect our Palestinian people. The resistance used only a part of its capabilities during this fight with the occupation, and we will use all the means to protect our Palestinian nation.
Well, the Lebanese resistance group Hezbollah is also weighing in, issuing a statement condemning that ongoing Israeli aggression in Gaza. The statement read, "This aggression is a continuation of the ongoing Zionist war on the Palestinian people since before the establishment of the occupying entity and the taking of the land and rights. It is strange and shameful that all these crimes and destruction have been committed with the silence of the so-called international community and Arab states that are standing idly by." Well, earlier we spoke to the Palestinian Affairs spokesperson Isra al-Mudallal, and she said that the resistance groups in Gaza have the right to defend themselves against Israeli aggression.
First of all, I would describe the certain situation here in Gaza for witnessing humanitarian disasters and crises with no any sense or moral or illegal even behaviors from the Israeli occupation against 1,800,000 person here in Gaza. In very special month like Ramadan, we're having more than 90% of poverty, very bad situation, lots of bad health treatment, and in the same time we're having a problem with the border. Until this moment, Rafah border, until this moment no any of the patients from Gaza Strip went across to Egypt. At the same time, the count number of shuhada until this moment around 6 to 1. We're having more than 615 who are injured. We are talking about more than 55 houses were totally damaged. So those people, where are they going to go with no any other places? Lots of bad stories and really massive weapons for the smart machine, the Israeli machine, against those people. It's very ridiculous.
Well, the United Nations Security Council held an emergency meeting regarding the deteriorating situation in the Gaza Strip. The UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon called on the Israelis and the Palestinians to show maximum restraint and urged both sides to urgently find common ground and reach an understanding.
It is now more urgent than ever to try to find common ground for a return to calm and the ceasefire understanding. Mr. President, distinguished Council members, once again, civilians are paying the price for the continuation of conflict. I called on both sides to exercise maximum restraint, show statesmanship, and to weigh the risks of further escalation. Gaza and the region as a whole cannot afford another full-blown war and another fault line.
We call on the Security Council to act immediately to protect civilian lives, which are being lost and destroyed with each passing minute of the Israeli military aggression being waged against the Palestinian people in occupied Palestine, particularly in the Gaza Strip. I speak on behalf of the suffering and grieving Palestinian people who are enduring yet another barrage of death, destruction, trauma, and terror, which is being perpetrated willfully and maliciously against them by the Israeli occupying forces before the eyes of the world, as it persists with its nearly 5-decade-long belligerent military occupation. This illegal, inhumane Israeli occupation is unjustifiable under any context and contravenes all principles of international law, human decency, and moral conscience.
Let's get some more perspective on this with political analyst Nabil Khalil, who joins us now from our Beirut studios. Mr. Khalil, we have seen quite a strong response by Palestinian resistance groups. Is this likely to escalate into a third intifada?
Well, we hope so. At least this time the aggressions of Israel against Gaza is not alone. People in West Bank and in the territory occupied in 1948 are expressing being one people together, giving the hand-in-hand powerful help to the people in Gaza, just showing that we are one people, whether we are in West Bank and in 1948 occupied territory or in Gaza. Escalating the situation to kind of intifada is a real challenge for the Palestinian people, because Israel is attacking every city and every place in West Bank, in Jerusalem, and getting people prisoners. Therefore, and Gaza is under attack, permanent under attack. Therefore, it's big challenge. It's very difficult for the people, whether they are in any of the territory of Palestine occupied by Israel.
Well, is Hamas prepared for a potential incursion by the Israelis?
It's not only Hamas. All the Palestinian people in Gaza are prepared for huge resistance, whether in Gaza or in any other part of Palestine. Palestinian people in Gaza now has the experience of a previous attack of the Israelis military, the Israeli troops. And the Israeli troops has the experience as well, that it's not easy to make an attack on territory of Gaza. It's going to be very expensive for them. Each inch, each centimeter of Gaza is going to be extremely costly for the troops of Israel. And the people, yes, they are prepared this time better and much better, as we see, than before, to reject and to resist any attack on Gaza Strip.
Well, Netanyahu has reiterated that a ceasefire with the Palestinians will not be brokered anywhere in the near future. Is the Zionist regime dead set on creating a war?
These are only empty words of Netanyahu. Netanyahu knows very well that if he escalates, the Palestinian resistance are ready to escalate as well. The only situation of Gaza now, the big difference now on the Gaza Strip is that the regional situation is not helping Palestinian people in Gaza, and he knows that he can keep firing against the people in Gaza. Nevertheless, the entire situation of the internal political issues in Israel is not helping Netanyahu. He needs to accelerate the finishing, the ending of the situation in Gaza in order to get himself together.
Well, you do bring up an interesting point. How would the Israelis benefit from another war on the Gaza Strip or the West Bank?
I believe that Israel is not benefiting now in attacking Gaza. Yet they think that as Egypt is busy and the whole region is busy, they can take advantage of the situation and attack the people of Palestine as they are alone. The Arab countries are busy in their internal situation, and the international community are busy in many issues of the world. Therefore, Netanyahu and the Israelis think that they can accelerate their attacks and their incursion against Gaza, and they can improve their attacks against them and make some achievement. While I believe, and observers in the region, as we see that Palestinian resistance is getting the attack back, they are retaliating with real attack against long distance position of Israel and getting the terror back to Israeli settlements.
All right, political analyst Mr. Nabil Khalil, it was a pleasure having you join us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Seven people, including 3 police officers, were wounded when a motorcycle exploded near a police directorate in the northern Iraqi city of Kirkuk. According to security officials, the explosive-laden motorcycle, which was parked at the site days earlier, detonated, causing massive material damage to a number of nearby cars. Meanwhile, relations between Baghdad and Erbil have gone from bad to worse. Iraqi Kurdish President Masoud Barzani's spokesman has described Iraqi Premier Nouri al-Maliki as hysterical and called on the leader to step down after al-Maliki accused the semi-autonomous region of harboring militants loyal to the al-Qaeda offshoot of the so-called Islamic State.
Tensions are running very high between Baghdad and Erbil. Only hours after Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki accused leaders in the semi-autonomous region of Kurdistan of harboring militants, a spokesman for the Iraqi Kurdish president called on the national premier to step down. In a statement published on the Kurdish Regional Presidency website, Erbil slammed the Iraqi premier. Maliki has become hysterical and has lost his balance. You must apologize to the Iraqi people and step down. You have destroyed the country, and someone who has destroyed the country cannot save the country from crises.
لا يمكن أن نسكت أن تكون أربيل مقر لعمليات داعش والبعث والقاعدة والإرهابيين.
The virulent statement came after Maliki charged that the Kurdish regional capital Erbil was harboring militants fighting his government, including the Islamic State, an extremist group which declared a caliphate in Iraq and Syria last month. Deputy Prime Minister Roz Nouri Shawez, the highest-level Kurdish official in the government, also told reporters on Thursday that Maliki's statements were meant to hide the big security fiasco by blaming others, announcing that Kurdistan will boycott future cabinet meetings. It was unclear what immediate impact the decision will have. However, such comments are likely to further deepen the historic tensions between Baghdad and Erbil, given that the Kurds hold the minister posts of foreign affairs, trade, health, immigration, and displacement.
Spokesman for the Iraqi Dawah Party in the UK, Zuhair al-Nahar, joins us now from London for more on this story. It is a pleasure to have you with us tonight. Now, are Baghdad and Erbil heading towards a military confrontation?
No, this is not going to happen. However, Prime Minister Maliki is continually frustrated by the way that the Kurdish leadership, particularly Masoud Barzani, has been acting. Masoud Barzani wishes an inclusive government which is patriotic, and yet he calls for the division of Iraq, and also has hosted a conference where so-called tribal leaders allied to the extremist Al-Qaeda and ISIS terrorists have gone there, held their conference. So this is why the Prime Minister Maliki has called out for for Masoud Barzani to behave in a way that is appropriate and according to his words.
Well, what do the Kurds gain out of supporting these so-called Islamic State militants, as Premier Maliki has suggested?
Well, obviously, it can be seen that to Masoud Barzani, the status quo is beneficial in that the Kurds have been able to acquire large areas, particularly Kirkuk, even driving out the Iraqi army from these areas. The Peshmerga, the army of the Kurds, has been driving out Iraqi army units in order to occupy these areas. And now Masoud Barzani is calling for a referendum within Kurdistan in order to try and seek separation of the Kurdish area from Iraq.
Well, let's discuss that a little bit. Is the Kurdish region going to become an independent state?
Well, I mean, this is something that it seems that Masoud Barzani is intent upon doing. However, this is rejected by the majority of Iraqis, as well as many Kurdish people. So it is something that would not be in the interests of the Kurds, and of course would not be in the interests of Iraq.
Well, if the KRG crowd do decide to move towards an independent state, what can Baghdad do to stop it?
Well, I mean, the Iraqi constitution, to which the Kurds voted for and uphold, does not have a provision for the separation of a part of Iraq. So they are, if they do this, it will be an illegal act.
But they don't really seem to care about the constitution.
Well, this may be the case, and this is why the whole situation is unfortunate. We hope and pray that the Kurdish leadership, particularly Masoud Barzani, sees sense and sees that Iraq as a whole will benefit and will function better as a whole rather than him separating.
Well, okay, is the outcome of that parliamentary session on Sunday now a foregone conclusion? Because the Kurds are not going to back down. Maliki, and they are unlikely to back your party's choice, whoever that may be.
Well, the fact is that the Kurds have been requested to find a candidate for the presidency. And they have not been able to do that because of infighting between themselves and divisions between themselves. So they cannot then turn around and blame the State of Law Coalition and the Iraqi Alliance for not providing a candidate, because the State of Law Coalition has said that Maliki is the candidate. So, you know, I think again this is delaying tactics, and this is not to the benefit of Iraq at all.
So is the Dawah Party going to nominate anyone other than Maliki?
Well, there are discussions ongoing this very minute and these days. And this is something that will be decided by the Dawa Party, the State of Law Coalition, and its allies. No one knows what will happen, but at the moment, the only candidate that has been put forward is Maliki.
All right, we will leave it there. Zuhair al-Nahar, the spokesperson for the Iraqi Dawa Party, thank you very much for being with us. Well, thousands of Iraqis have sought refuge in the northeastern town of Kanakin since Islamic State militants began with their onslaught last month. But soon, this town may no longer be a safe haven as the Kurdish region moves forward with its push for independence.
This is the Iraqi town of Khanaqin. Thousands of Iraqis have been forced to flee their homes and seek refuge here since the militant onslaught began last month. A drive through Khanaqin's refugee camp gives a clear picture of the grim reality these Iraqis have been forced to deal with in the middle of the desert under the scorching heat, making do with what little they have.
We were forced to leave our homes and everything else behind and come here.
We want the politicians to sit down and discuss the crisis and get all of these innocent civilians back to their homes.
Organizations such as the Iraqi Red Crescent Society and the UN Refugee Agency have been struggling to cope with the increasing number of displaced civilians flocking to safety.
We have distributed more than 2,000 aid packages to families here. The Red Crescent has also provided medical and emergency services, as well as first aid to the displaced.
But it is not only these displaced Iraqis whose status is unclear for the time being. Khanaqin, which lies 150 kilometers northeast of Baghdad, is a disputed area itself, claimed by both the central government and Iraq's semi-autonomous Kurdish region. And with the Kurdish leadership pushing forward with its independence claims, this town may be a new battleground in the Iraqi crisis, forcing the people here to relocate again.
And in next-door Syria, the death toll in the 3-year crisis has eclipsed 170,000 people, one-third of them civilians. The British-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, a monitoring group which relies on a network of spies across Syria, reported that 56,495 civilians, including 9,092 children, were among the dead, which included casualties documented up to July 8th of this year, adding that the number of killed among fighters on both sides was likely to be much higher. And coming up here to Latija World News. From Germany with love, Berlin expels the top U.S. spy in the country. Welcome back. Our top stories this hour. The Israelis continue to pound Gaza as the death toll climbs to 88, while the Israeli premier rules out the possibility of a ceasefire. Palestinian resistance groups retaliate to Israeli aggression, launching rockets against major Israeli cities. And Erbil taunts Nouri al-Maliki after the Iraqi premier accused the Kurdish authorities of harboring extremist militants. As troops loyal to Kiev gear up to enter the rebel stronghold of Donetsk, President Petro Poroshenko has promised to exercise restraint in his so-called anti-terrorist operation, which has devastated eastern Ukrainian cities. This as the country's health ministry revealed that 478 civilians have already been killed during the military crackdown.
Eastern Ukraine has been quieter than usual, with Ukrainian tanks and armoured vehicles patrolling the almost deserted streets. But this may be the calm before the storm. The Ukrainian army has tightened its grip around Donetsk as it prepares to deliver what it calls a nasty surprise to the rebels, who over the last week have amassed in the provincial capital. After pushing out the self-defense units from their bastion in Slavyansk last week, soldiers loyal to Kiev seem to be in high spirits, hoping the fighting with rebels is entering the final stage.
I am ready to fight till the end along with my friends in order for all of this to come to an end as soon as possible.
But as government forces gain the upper hand by recapturing several cities in the east, they have left a trail of blood and destruction along the way. According to Ukraine's Deputy Health Minister, 478 civilians, including 7 children, have been killed during Kiev's military crackdown in the east. But this conflict will only end, it seems, for a diplomatic solution. Russia's President Vladimir Putin received assurances during a phone conversation from his German and French counterparts that a ceasefire would be pursued in eastern Ukraine. While Ukraine's President Petro Poroshenko promised to exercise restraint in his drive to control rebel-held areas, he called on the Russian leader to stop the flow of weapons coming across the border. Although Moscow has consistently denied these accusations, it seems pressure from eastern Ukrainians is piling up on President Putin to be more involved in ending the crisis and live up to its promises of protecting the Russian-speaking minority.
The U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry visited the Chinese capital, where Washington and Beijing vowed to step up security cooperation. During a meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping, the two also agreed to work harder on issues surrounding North Korea and Iran's nuclear energy program.
We reached agreement that we need to both do more, and we are prepared to, in order to try to move North Korea on the subject of its denuclearization. Secondly, we came to agreement that we must press forward together in unity with respect to Iran's nuclear program, and we look forward to continuing to cooperate in the P5+1.
While fresh allegations of spying are undermining U.S. efforts to mend relations with Germany, just weeks after the two allies launched a diplomatic initiative to overcome the NSA surveillance row. In the latest escalation, Berlin has expelled the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency's station chief in Germany.
Just days after an operative from the German Foreign Intelligence Agency was arrested as a suspected informant for the CIA, news of an alleged second U.S. spy in the Defense Ministry has sparked anger across the country.
Friends must not be treated like enemies. Being partners and at the same time spying on each other is incompatible. What we expect during our investigation is that the Americans also make an effort to clarify the matter so that the German-American relationship does not suffer cracks, which can only be repaired with difficulty.
For her part, the German chancellor, who was herself the target of some of those espionage activities, said that spying on allies is a waste of energy.
The federal prosecutor general is still looking into this case, but if what we hear right now is true, I have to say that from my point of view, spying on allies is a waste of energy in the end. We have so many problems, and I think we should focus on the important things. Just look at the challenges posed in Syria regarding ISIS. If you look at the fight against terrorism, there are huge problems. That is of the highest priority from my point of view, and not spying among allies.
In response to the latest developments, the German government, in a highly unusual move, ordered the CIA station chief in Berlin to leave the country.
The federal government has asked the U.S. intelligence services representative here in Germany to leave the country in reaction to a continuous lack of cooperation regarding the investigations of various accusations, starting with the NSA up to the latest issues.
While the transatlantic relations are already strained following last year's bruising from the NSA surveillance scandal, sparked by revelations of U.S. intelligence contractor Edward Snowden, this latest scandal involving U.S.-German double agents in the post-war era could turn allies into foes.
Meanwhile, a new report published online has revealed that the U.S. National Security Agency has monitored the emails of 5 high-profile Muslim Americans over a long period of time. The document goes on to show how and when Washington violated the privacy of U.S. citizens.
From spying on international leaders to hacking into private companies' accounts, the list of transgressions committed by the UN National Security Agency is growing. Now, a new report leaked by American whistleblower Edward Snowden and published on the Intercept website revealed the names of 5 prominent Muslim American academics and activists whose emails were monitored by the FBI and NSA. One of those targeted by the NSA controversial program was Asim Ghafoor, an attorney general and Muslim rights advocate. Phone calls with his clients were tapped, and even while he was personally suing the Bush administration over that, his emails were still being monitored.
I believe I was targeted because my name is Asim Abdurrahman Ghafoor. I'm from India, my parents are from India, and I travel to Saudi Arabia as a young man and I do the pilgrimage. Yes, absolutely, I believe that had something to do with it because there were former Bush administration officials representing Saudi entities, and I doubt their emails were tapped.
Another victim of the NSA surveillance activities was Nihad Awad, the executive director of America's largest Muslim civil rights organization. After September 11th, his email accounts were a primary target of hardline new conservatives.
I was not aware that I was under surveillance except recently, and I'm outraged that as an American citizen, my government, after decades of civil rights struggle, still the government spies on political activists, civil rights activists and leaders. It is outrageous, and I'm really angry that despite all the work that we have been doing in our communities to serve the nation, to serve our communities, we are treated with suspicion.
Washington, however, was quick to decline the latest revelations. It claimed that U.S. intelligence agencies have never conducted electronic surveillance of political or religious figures simply because they disagree with its policies. But as in previous cases, the latest report could only add to the controversy the U.S. administration has been embroiled in for months.
After 3 days of heavy fighting against the Yemeni army and allied extremists, Houthi rebels have taken control of the northern strategic city of Amran, a development viewed as a major blow to the government, which has failed to deal with the political crisis in the Arab country. Our Sana correspondent Mohammed Al-Attab has that full story.
Yemen's Houthi fighters have seized control of the northern city of Amran after 3 days of fierce fighting with Al-Qaeda-linked militants. Houthi rebels were able to take control of police stations and the headquarters of the 310th Yemeni Army Brigade in Amran, effectively claiming the city. However, the group said it had no intention of governing the city, but was focused on fighting Takfiri militants in the country.
What happened in Amran is because of the Brotherhood and its militants refused to implement the ceasefire agreement, as they have declared this officially in their media means. Therefore, they should be blamed for the bloodshed, and now people of Amran have taken control of the city and are ready to hand over the government facilities to the president.
The fall of Amran into the hands of Houthis has been described by many observers as living proof of the central government's failure to guarantee equality for its citizens.
The state, represented by the president, should work on putting an end to such conflict between the warring sides and to start a serious dialogue, which should include all political powers along with the Houthi group. And such a dialogue should start after all the armed militants hand over their weapons to the state and the government force its law and order across the country.
Yemeni President Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi has received assurances from Saudi Arabia that it will stand by his side in a war against the Houthis. However, with the rebel group now advancing further towards the Yemeni capital, some political experts believe that Sana'a may be the next battleground.
We do not think that Saudis are stupid to involve themselves in another war with Houthis, as the group has inflicted heavy casualties on Saudis in the previous wars. And President Hadi should take a lesson from what happened in Amran, and do not to be biased to any party, because he knows if he is not going to do so, Sana'a will fall in the hands of Houthis after Amran and in only hours.
Fresh clashes re-erupted last month in the north following the breakdown of an 11-day ceasefire agreement. Both sides have accused each other of violating the ceasefire agreement, and now as Houthis have taken full control of Amran city, President Hadi have to start addressing the root causes of the problem and avert the plots aiming to divide Yemen on sectarian grounds. Muhammad Al-Attab, Al-Ittijah TV, Sana'a.
Nearly 2 million workers across the UK walked off the job on Thursday in protest over the government's austerity measures. Tens of thousands also staged rallies to protest the government-imposed cuts. Hassan Abbas attended one of those rallies in London and sent us this report.
Millions of Britain's workforce took part in the protests against government austerity measures. According to the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, the cost of maintaining a decent living standard in Britain has gone up by 46% since 2008. Wages, on the other hand, have only gone up 9%. The TUC says around 5 million workers in Britain are paid less than a living wage, while fat-cap bankers and billionaires are raking in more profits than ever before.
Well, we're marching because we think it's really unfair with the pay cuts and the fact that most public sector workers haven't had a pay rise for well over 2 years. And the fact is that workload has increased and pay and living conditions have increased and pay hasn't, and it's just not fair. As a teacher, I feel that it's really unjust because we work incredibly hard hours. We're doing a really good, important service. We're training the future generations. And if we aren't able to pay our rent or feed our children, then it's becoming untenable for a lot of teachers to be able to continue working, especially in inner London.
As trade unions gear up for a protracted campaign against the cuts, firefighters have named 15 strike periods over 8 days from next week in their battle over pensions.
We're here to demonstrate today because the government is trying to make us firefighters work until we're 60 and we're losing out on our pension. If we don't pass their fitness criteria after the age of 55, they will virtually sack us for that and we'll lose our pension. So we're here today to support us, to make sure the firefighters get a fair deal and a fair pension to what we pay into.
Protesters say the action is vital because even the Labour Party, under Ed Miliband's leadership, has made it clear that they will stick to Tory spending plans and that the 1% pay limit will stay in place if they come to power.
I think people have been fooled to a large degree by the media, which highlights that the country is broke. The country isn't broke. The country is rolling in money. This city, London, has more billionaires than any city on earth. There's plenty of money there, but it's not being shared around.
The organisers of this demonstration believe that strike action can beat austerity and are already planning more protests and strikes for a fairer distribution of Britain's wealth. Well, dozens of unions have turned out to today's demonstration with their members. It's perhaps going to be the largest demonstration yet against the Tory cuts. People are beginning to mobilise in the run-up to the election next year, and it seems that public opinion is growing in Britain against the Tories' mantra of cuts are absolutely necessary. Mohsin Abbas, AEE TV, London.
Mariam Khaddad with you this hour. Let's take a last look at the headlines we've covered for you. The Israelis continue to pound Gaza as the death toll climbs to 88, while the Israeli premier rules out the possibility of a ceasefire. Palestinian resistance groups retaliate to Israeli aggression, launching rockets against major Israeli cities. And Erbil taunts Nouri al-Maliki after the Iraqi premier accused the Kurdish authorities of harboring extremist militants. Well, that's all for this edition of Al-Ittijah World News. Have a good night.